Approval of minutes from last meeting.
Oh.
So next thing, let's approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion we approve.
Okay. First by Seth, second by Cicely. Is there any further discussion on the agenda or anything like that? Let's see. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Agenda is set. Next thing is public hearing. Don't think we got anything. We'll see. Old business. How you want? No old business. New business. I believe we've got some. Are you going to be going over this, Miss Amanda Harrington? Miss Amanda, just going to go over the planning legislation updates. All right.
All right, thank y'all. So tonight's training is called a brief survey of select 2026 planning legislation updates in the state of Tennessee. The title of this is intentional. It is a very brief survey of very select planning legislation. I wanted to tell you all how I get my legislative updates. There is a Tennessee section of the American Planning Association, and it's called TAPA. It's the Tennessee section, the state chapter. And every spring and every fall, when the legislature goes into session, TAPA puts out this legislative update, and it is pages and pages and pages of updates. And they are sometimes 2 to 3 times a week. So it's very intense. TAPA has their own lobbyist. They help represent the interest of members of TAPA, which is made up of cities and counties throughout the state of Tennessee. And they help organize some grassroots efforts on legislation that comes through that may or may not be planning friendly. The last couple of legislative sessions, we've seen planning legislation that's very unfriendly to the planning profession. That's been the trend for the last 5 to 7 years. Very hostile to planning. For example, we're going to get into some. And it just keeps getting more and more so. So the bills that I have pulled out for tonight's training are just a couple of samples. They are not inclusive. They are not meant to be inclusive. They're not meant to be an analysis. They're not meant to be anything other than just an example of some things to put on your radar. I've also included some examples of planning legislation that went through the process but didn't make it to bill format. But again, it's a very brief survey of some examples of some legislation, 2 bills that did pass, 2 bills that did not pass. The Center for Local Planning was created this year through the Institute of Public Service through the University of Tennessee and Knoxville. It's a mouthful, but think of them like the CTAS, the County Technical Advisory Service, but for local planning issues. Those of us who have been around for a while may remember the Center for Local Planning, the Local Planning Advisory Office. I used to work for the local planning, for the state, back in the day before it was dissolved in 2011. And excuse me, they're bringing that back, but in a much smaller, much more modified form. The Center for Local Planning, excuse me, the Center for Local Planning is intended to focus on policy issues like these legislative updates and to help try to get the planners' voices out there and maybe try to help stem the tide of negative policy. The Home Builders Association has a very firm grip on the state legislature. So a lot of the bills that are coming out are really in favor of the Home Builders Association and developers. And you'll see that in some of the examples that we're going to go through. So I just wanted to tell you how I get my information. I am not on the Hill. I don't go to the planners days because I'm not employed by a city. I'm employed by many cities. So I get a lot of my information through TAPA. In fact, the information that is in your presentation tonight came from a combination of sources. It came from MTAS, the Municipal Technical Advisory Service. It came from CTAS, the County Technical Advisory Service, and it came from the Center for Local Planning. So these are all resources that are available to you all and the general public. And I encourage you, when you have time, to go take a look at their websites and kind of browse around, and you can take a look and see just kind of some of the resources that they have available in all your spare time, and have fun doing that. So the first item that we've got is Public Chapter 1090 that has to do with annexations. Again, I'm not prepared to do an in-depth analysis with you all, but this is something that did pass. I sent ahead of the presentation tonight this guidance document that was put out by the Center for Local Planning, saying it is titled Compliance with Public Chapter number 1090, New Potential Limitations on Municipal Planning and Zoning Authority Outside the City Limits. I'm not really sure how applicable this is going to be because you all are Metro, but it is something that passed and it got a lot of attention. So I thought it might be worth just kind of putting on the radar for you all to know about. But Public Chapter number 1090 shifts land use authority in some unincorporated areas from cities to counties. It also aims to ensure that new developments in areas that may later be annexed meet standards that allow it to connect to city infrastructure without placing added cost on existing city taxpayers. Cities and counties should work together to comply with the law and ensure residents continue to receive appropriate services as these changes take effect. So it used to be that with annexations, when you were in your urban growth boundary, that you would have some cooperation between your cities and your counties in annexations. In this Public Chapter 1090 forfeits some of those and gives more controls back to the counties. Well, the cities were obviously not very happy about that because it ceded more power, or it changed the structure more to the county's favor. So that's why Public Chapter 1090 got a lot of attention. And that's why they're saying cities and counties should still work together. On your next page, it says counties may adopt a resolution that replaces the city's zoning. Yes. Yes.
Right over the airport, Metro National and City of Nashville, Metro, I guess Metro government, state government, and then City of Nashville. It's sort of battling over who's gonna control the airport.
I'm not so sure about that. I'm not sure. It could be, but I'm not sure. Yeah. But Public Chapter 1090 says counties may adopt a resolution that replaces a city's zoning, subdivision, and building regulations in areas outside the city's limits. So obviously cities are not real super happy about that. Cities, counties, and developers may enter may enter interlocal agreements to transition planning and zoning responsibilities outside the city limits. And property owners in these areas must state whether they intend to have their property annexed into the city in the future. So it's putting a lot of pressure. And it's perceived as putting a lot of pressure on property owners to say whether or not you intend to be annexed into the future. Like, how do you know? How do you know what you want to do in 20 years? And how do you know if you're going to leave this property to your children? How do your children know what they're going to want to do? Exactly. Exactly. So it's been kind of a deal. So anyway, that's just a really, like I said, a super brief overview of Public Chapter 1090. There is a guidance document that I sent ahead, and it does say the key takeaways in this guidance document says that the Public Chapter 1090 authorizes county legislative bodies to adopt a resolution voiding and superseding any zoning, subdivision, or building regulations that cities may have outside their municipal limits. Communities are, however, authorized to enter into interlocal agreements with one another and with developers for the winding down of the municipality's obligations outside the municipal limits and for other aspects of the planning and zoning process. And the owners of all projects built and constructed within these areas must provide a declaration of whether or not they intend to be annexed. As written, Public Chapter number 1090 appears to authorize counties to eliminate municipal land use authority outside the city limits, including zoning, subdivision regulations, and building and other code enforcement. However, municipalities and counties may still enter into those interlocal agreements, allowing municipalities to continue providing certain services such as inspections, plan review, related functions consistent with state law. Rosalie, has any of this information come up in any of the trainings that you go to as a building official?
They have not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
In fact, I attend a training tomorrow.
Okay.
So that may be a discussion. It's down in Murfreesboro, so I'm sure they'll be more impacted by this 1090 than we would, since we're metro
Metro. Yeah.
rather than so much city and
City and
county. They have their own inspectors, each one,
Okay.
and like that. So stay tuned.
Yeah. Okay. Good deal. The Center for Local Planning did advise some best practices for all in understanding existing regulations and transitions. Before taking action under Public Chapter 1090, local governments should review existing regulations, ensure maps are up to date, and identify any needed transition procedures. Of course, that sounds like good advice for any kind of policy or that you have reviewing your existing regulations and ensuring maps are up to date. Evaluate your staffing needs and amend county zoning documents if necessary. Counties with zoning should update zoning maps and ordinances to reflect any jurisdictional changes and comply with required public notice and hearing procedures. Counties may wish to set an effective date for changes authorized by Public Chapter 1090 to coincide with the adoption of any necessary updates to the county zoning map, zoning ordinance, and other regulations. Update municipal regulations, notify affected residents, create an annexation declaration form, and adjust gaps in counties without land use controls. So again, I think Ms. Rosalie is correct that this is going to really affect other communities much more so than you all, because you are metro. But again, this did make a big splash up on the Hill this year, so I thought I would go ahead and include it in one of the big bills that hit this year. Okay. Moving on in your presentation, TCA, Tennessee Code Annotated, Section 8-44-110. This section of Tennessee Code Annotated has been amended in recent years to expand agenda and online posting requirements for local governments. For local planning officials, this change directly affected how meetings are prepared, noticed, and conducted by extending requirements to include numerous boards and committees, including municipal and regional planning commissions and boards of zoning appeals. Agendas must be made available to the public for free at least 48 hours prior to a regular meeting. It kind of makes me wonder if people have been charging for the agenda because they made a point to say for free. Somebody somewhere probably did. Um, if the local government maintains a website, the agenda must be placed on on the website within 48 hours of any regular meeting. There is no flexibility in this requirement. If you've got a website, you've got to post it. The agenda must reasonably describe the matters to be deliberated or acted upon during the public meeting. I cannot express this enough. Y'all's agenda is great. There are some communities will just say like Mr. Smith issue on XYZ road. Seriously, drives me absolutely crazy. It's like, which Mr. Smith and which issue on the road? Is it a variance? Is it a site plan? Is it a plat? What kind of a plat is it? We need to get some more details. Boards and commissions may deliberate or act upon matters not listed on the agenda of its regular meeting if they follow their bylaws or properly adopted rules and procedures, and if they comply with all other applicable state laws. So Ms. Rosalie and I were talking about the bylaws, and I'm not gonna steal her thunder on that one. But I think some work on the bylaws are going to be forthcoming. But I know that the reason that this bill came forward is a lot of times communities were using the ability to amend the agenda at the meeting for big items. We're not talking like, hey, a report from staff or, a final plat of a 2-lot subdivision. We're talking like major subdivisions and major rezonings and things like that. And that really was violating the spirit and the spirit of being able to amend the agenda. So that's why they're locking down the agenda 48 hours prior to. If your bylaws have a way for for the community to amend the agenda at the meeting, and if you follow that procedure and you follow all other applicable state law requirements, meaning that it's been properly noticed and advertised, in the paper and on your website and all of the things before that, then you're fine. But no slipping in these, big agenda items at the last minute without proper notice. That's a violation of due process. Make sense? Okay. All right. And then boards and commissions may not withhold items from an agenda for the purpose of avoiding public disclosure of business to be considered. So it cuts both ways. Oh, okay. So on your next page, attention. TCA 8-44-110 imposes a significant new requirement on local governments. The statute also provides significant public benefit by affording greater opportunity to review agendas prior to meetings. The bill requires agendas to be posted on the local government's website, making it easier for the public to access meeting information and archived records online. So it's not just posting, you got to keep it up there. It also encourages the use of electronic documents, which can reduce printing costs, save staff time, and lower expenses for the public. It must be noted that the language of TCA 844-110 is not permissive. Local governments that maintain a website yet fail to post relevant agendas, may be subject to liability. Failure to comply could result in the invalidation of actions taken by planning commissions, Board of Zoning Appeals, and other bodies. Best practices. Practice transparency. So we talked a lot about transparency in our trainings, haven't we? So we talked about ex parte communications. We've talked about posting agendas. We've talked about how to not have serial meetings over emails. This is yet another step in your practice of transparency. We need to be sure that we're amending our bylaws and our zoning ordinances. Some communities have really robust procedures on how to conduct their meetings and their zoning ordinances and not so much in their bylaws and vice versa. So wherever those rules are, that's where we need to be sure that we're really bulked up and current. Formalized submittal calendars, which we've done. Include other boards and commissions. And I know that Ms. Rosalie does a really great job in going to other boards and commissions and letting them know what's going on in planning commission. And I think you go to the water board as well. Yep, IDB. So you do a really great job cross-pollinating, and that's not that's not that's not very common. So you are to be commended for that effort. Publishing meeting packets. You know, it doesn't go so far in TCA to say that that the meeting packet has to be online. It just says the agenda has to be online. But you know, publishing those meeting packets to your members well in advance so that so that once it's open to your members, it's open to the general public as well. And also making sure that the paper copies are available to the general public should anybody want copies of those. One thing I did not include in the training presentation, but I meant to, is another public comment section that's been added to the agenda. Not only is it public comment that's germane to the agenda, but there's another public comment section that has been added that is relevant to anything that anybody may want to come in and talk about. So that's at boards of zoning appeals and that's at planning commission. Now, I meant to put that in the packet and failed to do so, and that is my error, and I apologize for that. Most communities have been putting that part at the end. They keep the public comment for items that are germane to the agenda at the beginning, and then put the public comment for anything else that anybody may need to feel the need to get off their chest at the end. So if you want to just come in and talk about chickens, I don't know, whatever, you'll have to wait till all of the regular business is done. But if you want to talk about something that is on the agenda, then you have the opportunity to address the boards first.
So just for clarification's sake, we need to have a public comment at the very end, say below, if you were to look at this agenda, below the report from the building official, add public comment, and then anybody that has anything that they want to say about anything in the world,
Yeah.
like their favorite color is red, that's their, okay.
Yes, and I will get you
Duly noted.
I'll get you the TCA citation for that. Yes. Yeah. So there would be two sections. What I've seen other communities do is two sections. One is public comment related to the agenda, and then one is public comment other. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that way it's, you know, what, yeah. And that way those who want to just talk about their favorite color can wait to the end after after normal business has been concluded. Okay, so next in your packet are bills that were considered but did not advance. And this is some examples of maybe not so friendly toward planning. Property rights, land use compensation legislation. Legislation was introduced that would allow property owners to seek compensation if newly adopted land use regulations reduce the value of their property. So any rezonings. If the rezoning happened, either the property itself or, so let's say that property A got rezoned and property B felt that it lowered the value of their property, they could seek compensation from the local government and they would have to pay. That had a lot of traction.
And this did not pass.
It did not pass this time, but it will be back the next legislative session. Oh, it isn't? Oh.
Why did you know the information behind what stage did it
It almost got to the governor's, it almost got to the governor's desk, and there was a groundswell of phone calls and grassroots that stopped it. Yes. That's, imagine any rezoning that happened, people would seek compensation and the local government would have to pay out. Like communities called and said, this would be local governments called and said, this would be disastrous to our budget. Yes, that's what I mean by grassroots. Yes. Oh, no, like local governments called and said this would be absolutely disastrous to our budgets if this were to pass. Yeah, yeah. And they, there was a lot of consternation about how would you prove that it hurt your land value, you know? Yeah, I mean, who's to prove? I mean, is it, real estate appraisals?
But you're talking about like a long drawn out, like if they're gonna pay out for whatever, I mean, you're talking about a long drawn out thing. It's not gonna just happen right then. It's gonna attorneys and all that stuff.
I mean, all of the things. So, I mean, there was a lot.
The payer would have to, although it is almost tax and property tax, so would it, I mean, not necessarily, right?
Yeah.
It would be somewhat.
Yeah, there was a lot of debate and that's the other side of it. So, but that part wasn't really talked about. It was more just, land use plans, rezonings, site plan approvals. If there was development in an industrial, industrially zoned piece of property, next to a vacant parcel, is that going to ruin your property value? Well, if the adjoining property owner is industrial also, so how do you join those? I mean, there was just so many things involved in it that how do you really, how do you think through those things? If enacted in the future, such legislation could significantly affect rezonings, zoning text amendments, development regulations, comprehensive planning. So although widely discussed, this proposal generated significant debate regarding local government planning authority. So definitely keep an eye out. It'll hit again probably this next session, in some form or fashion. Like I said, I mean, it almost made it. And then there was enough outcry from the local governments, and TML, Tennessee Municipal League, got behind it to lobby against it. TAPA did. I think MTAS took a stand against it. Not necessarily saying no, but just we need more study on it.
Where does this come from?
I think it was Lamberth was the sponsor of the bill. I could be wrong though. I'm just. I didn't write down the. Possibly. I didn't write down the. Okay. Yeah. Mhm. You need to come up and put it on the record for us here, because I was just doing a brief, big ones that advanced but didn't pass. Yeah. And the second one that was kind of a big one that advanced but didn't pass was the public hearing notice changes. Legislation was introduced to reduce the required public notice for zoning hearings from 21 days to 14 days at the legislative body. It was introduced, but was not among the major enacted planning bills for 2026. That's not surprising. Anything that reduces a hearing period is not gonna fly. I mean, so I don't know who thought that would actually work, but it didn't. So that's all I've got. Like I said, it's a very brief survey of very select 2026 planning legislation updates. I encourage you all to, like I said, take a look at the Center for Local Planning, MTAS, CTAS. When the legislative session goes back in, I'll try to update you all, but it gets very intensive by the time we meet. Information is updated daily. So I'll do the best I can to keep you all informed, but there are others here that keep their finger on the pulse as well. So be-
Notified you, it keeps you, again, subscribe to what's.
yeah, well, this one, like on 1090, I just went on the Center for Local Planning website and pulled their advisory document and then just compiled it into a thing. I was talking with Miss Rosalie that I'm a little bit reluctant to get too much into legislative stuff because things change and I'm not up on the hill and I'm not getting this information directly. And, I'm getting well, apparently I've outdone my welcome here. I get the hint. I'll stop.
Test, test, test. I'm on. Yeah.
So I'm getting my information, from a couple of different places and everything like that. So, I think it would be really, really a good idea to invite those who are more, first, secondhand to come in and give the presentations and, give those more directly.
Okay, thank you very much. We need a report from the building official, Ms. Rosalie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to kind of give you a brief update of what's been happening in the building office and in our world, so to speak. I know I sent out an email to everyone telling you about the Planning Academy from the Center for Local Planning that they were offering. And out of 70 applicants, 30 were selected. I happened to be one of them, and I attended my very first meeting last Thursday. It was very excellent. It gave you a basic scope of what planning is going to be doing or what it should be doing. They will also go into great detail about all of these different new initiatives that the state has adopted. And in speaking with Amanda as well, as she said, going to be talking with them to see if they can come and start sharing information and do training for us as well, going into the in-depth sessions. When she was talking about our bylaws, I have a copy of the bylaws. The bylaws were created back in 1974. And it encompasses both the Planning Commission and the BZA. And needless to say, it's very outdated. We became a metro organization back in 2001. So 74 to 2001 and now 2001 to 2026, imagine the changes that have happened in our community. So I'll be handing out copies of our bylaws. And also we need to correlate that with our zoning ordinances. It does mention in our zoning ordinances about the Board of Zoning Appeals. Initially, and I thought this was rather unique, back in the day, 3 of the city planning commissioners and 3 of the county planning commissioners comprised the Board of Zoning Appeals. And it's like, ooh, isn't that interesting? So now we're sitting at 7. You guys had requested to have additional members added to the Board of Zoning Appeals to make it easier to have attendance and be able to meet quorum quotas. And the county commission approved that, and thus we have new members. Welcome, Seth. So we'll be looking at that and what Amanda was saying, you know, how we go about things. We'll need to amend the bylaws now too, because it also detailed out how our agendas should look. So now we need to be adding that public comment as well. So stay tuned. Next month should be interesting. We also had just lost my train of thought, of course. Happy Monday. During the planning commission, and you're welcome to stay, this will also count for training hours. And I did find out with the local planning commission that BZA members need to have 4 hours worth of training as well. Yeah, well, it was kind of, and we just did it with the BZA because you guys were having to do a lot of deliberation and evaluation of variances. Well, it's difficult to look at a variance if you don't really know what's in our zoning ordinance. And what better way was to combine the trainings to elevate everybody's education on what your responsibilities are and how to really evaluate and make good determinations. So the next meeting, the Planning Commission, we will be looking at data center ordinances from 2 different jurisdictions and start that process of evaluating what do we need to see here in this jurisdiction. Now, we're not going to be making any determinations, but we're going to be looking at definitions, how they designate where they go, things of that nature. And of course, after the planning commission and everything, that information goes to the codes and zoning committee, and they will put more meat on the bone, so to speak, bring it back to planning, and then it goes to the county commission for them to vote and adopt into our ordinances. So, any questions?
You said you were gonna be bringing a copy of the bylaws for us to be able to look over next week and next month?
Is the idea for us to go over it in the meeting, or will we have like a subcommittee or so? What's the plan to fix the bylaws?
As far as having a clear-cut plan on how to fix the bylaws, I think we all should talk about what you see, because I think having, you know, objective opinions, especially those that have been in, say, the Board of Zoning Appeals or on the Planning Commissioner or a county commissioner at any one time, will be able to give us some insight on what might be lacking in our bylaws. Again, 1974 to 2026 is quite a long time. And compiling with our new combined ordinances, looking at that, maybe we need to update that as well. So I think doing it as a group and exploring and having Amanda as a resource on, you know, other best practice, I think is going to be a good talking point for us.
Okay, so this would be the part where I would ask the public if they wanted to, if they have anything to say. Does anybody in the public have anything they want to discuss? Okay. I don't have anything. I think I did miss a meeting. We've had a lot going on with the family. Just wanted to apologize to y'all if did I miss a meeting or did we rescheduled? No, thank you. Thank you. Any comments, or anything from y'all? Do y'all have anything? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Ron. All these in favor say aye.
Uh,
All right, we stand adjourned. Thank y'all.